Welcome in to another episode of my Dynasty Fantasy Football YouTube channel. Today I'm looking at some Dynasty sleepers. Make sure to like, comment, and most importantly, subscribe if you haven't. Here's our first sleeper, Devin Singletary. So I honestly didn't really expect to be talking about Devin Singletary, but here we are. We're talking about him. I just think he's too low in ranks or KTC value if you want to use that, which is what we're going to use. He is running back 41 on there. I have him running back 34. And I just think he's not that old. He just signed a new contract. He should be valued a little bit higher. Let's take a look at what he's done so far. So, Devin Singletary's had a 5-year career, and it's been oddly very consistent. In 2019, as a rookie, he had 151 carries, 775 yards, 2 touchdowns, 5.1 yards a carry, and 29 catches for 194 yards and 2 touchdowns. So this was his most efficient season. And then the next 3 years, he kind of put up a lot of the same. Here's 156 carries for 687 yards and 2 touchdowns, 4.4 yards a carry, 38 catches, 269 yards. And then he did have 7 touchdowns in 2021, but very similar. All of this in Buffalo, of course. And then in 2022, again, kind of very similar. The same yards per carry, few fewer yards, few more catches, very similar production in 2022 and 2021. Then, of course, he signed with the Texans in 2023, ostensibly as the backup to Dameon Pierce. But as we know, he became the starter and ended up with his best year. 216 carries, 898 yards, 4 touchdowns, 4.2 yards a carry, and 30 catches for 193 yards. But what really happened was eventually, after about a few games, they made the switch from Pierce to Singletary. And Singletary dominated, at least on volume, down the stretch. He averaged 16.7 carries and 71.5 yards a game. He did have volume. And he's been a remarkably durable player throughout his career. He's played 16 or 17 games in all of the last 4 seasons. So he's never had a major injury since his rookie year. Now, currently, he signed a 3-year, $16.5 million deal with the Giants, which was not the highest mark on the running back free agent market, but a good mid-tier contract. And he faces no real competition on the depth chart. Now, yes, I'm going to hear Tyrone Tracy is real competition. I mean, maybe Tyrone Tracy, a converted wide receiver, can get some work on passing downs. Eric Gray is nothing. He was a bust last year. He didn't do anything. Singletary beat out Dameon Pierce. And I think that most people could agree that Dameon Pierce is a better running back than Eric Gray or Tyrone Tracy. I think so. So I do see a path to relevance here. Is it going to win you your league? Probably not. But what's relevant? Some people are in deep dynasty leagues. You might have to start 3 running backs. I just did a Patreon video on that. Maybe there is some relevance in your league. Now, to close out on Devin Singletary, I want to talk about how to acquire Singletary or sleepers like this in general. Would I trade for Devin Singletary? No, because I'm not going to pay a second and a third's not going to get it. So I'm probably not going to trade for Devin Singletary directly. So how do you get Devin Singletary? Draft him in the startup. That's the main way to get these sleeper type players. Just draft them. Or you could include him as part of a bigger trade. There's a lot of ways to do that. But if you're close on another trade, maybe you could get someone to throw in Devin Singletary. It could give you something in your lineup that could matter as we go through the season. Now, our second sleeper, Derek Carr. And Carr is ranked 32 on Keep Trade Cut. I have him quarterback 31. So the price among quarterbacks is fine, very similar. But on Keep Trade Cut, he's outside of the top 150 players in Superflex. I get it. I get why people don't like Derek Carr. I mean, kinda. I don't actually really get it. But that makes no sense. I think we've gone a little too far the other way on valuing these types of unexciting, low upside quarterbacks. They still have value in Superflex. And I'm fine just holding them on my team if, I can't get good value. Now, I don't think we need to look through every year of Derek Carr's career. But we'll look at last year where he played on the Saints. And I think everyone remembers Derek Carr's 2023 as being horrible, where he was terrible, awful, but not really. I mean, he played every game. He had 7.1 yards per attempt. That's not bad. He had 25 touchdowns to 8 interceptions. It's also not bad. And he had 68.4 completion percentage. So bad quarterbacks, those who are terrible, don't do that. They don't put up these types of numbers. They are not capable of that, especially in a broken Pete Carmichael offense, which is what he had last year. Now, let's compare last year's stats. Carr broke out in 2016. So we have a 7-year span to evaluate Derek Carr from when he broke out in year 3 to 2022, his last year on the Raiders. So we're looking, this is 2023. Now, here's a compilation of 2016 to 2022. Large sample size. 66.1% completion. That's pretty good. 164 touchdowns to 74 interceptions. Solid. 7.4 yards per attempt. That's actually better than his 2023. And 254.2 yards per game. And that's the main difference, is he had 228 yards per game here. He had more volume in his previous stints. He averaged, over those 7 years, 585 attempts per 17 games, but only had 548 attempts in 2023. So maybe some added volume will help Derek Carr this year. Now, a lot of people, I think Derek Carr is ancient. He's only 33, which is not old for a quarterback. Clint Kubiak is the new Saints offensive coordinator, who we know came from the 49ers system last year. And the Saints also restructured Carr's contract, pushing a $50 million dead cap hit into 2025. Now, will the Saints be horrible this year? I doubt it. They still have a decent roster. And we know that the NFC South is not famous for being a great division. I also find it hard to believe that a 34-year-old Derek Carr, who's had a successful record over the last 8 years of being a starting level quarterback, will just not be a starter next year. I mean, Russell Wilson, after being really bad for 2 years in Denver, is still a starter. So I do think he'll be a starter next year, probably for the Saints, but could be elsewhere. Now, close out on Derek Carr. It doesn't matter if he's not a starter next year. There's no risk at his current cost. No risk. Of course, he has the opportunity. Maybe he does play well. Maybe he plays well and you have a starting quarterback for 3 years. It's possible. That upside is certainly not baked into his current cost. So I would love to acquire Derek Carr. This is someone I might be willing. In Superflex, I might be willing to pay a late second next year for Derek Carr. That's a price I'm not uninterested in. So you do have direct ways to acquire him in addition to the indirect ways I talked about earlier in the Devin Singletary segment. Now, if you like my YouTube content, you should sign up for the Patreon. You get my rankings, access to the Discord, and the ability to ask in advance questions for the YouTube videos, which we'll cover later. Tiers begin at just $6 a month. And I also have now Patreon video roster reviews, which are available only for patrons and are posted in the Patreon Discord. So that's a new, exciting thing that you can get in on if you join the Patreon. And as always, I like to say this, the Patreon helps support my independent content. I don't sell third-party ads. Of course, we do have YouTube ads. That does make a little bit of money, but on a good video, that's $10 a video. So it's not supporting the channel. So the Patreon really is what helps support the YouTube, not the other way around. So I just appreciate everyone who signs up. We're getting into the season. We'll have start sit every week. I will be active in the Patreon Discord every single day. And that will be the way to interact with me, not on Twitter. So if you want that and you like my content, I suggest joining the Patreon. Now, my last sleeper, Dallas Goedert. Now, when Dallas Goedert became a sleeper, I don't know. But here's why I'm calling him a sleeper. Earlier in the offseason, I did a sell video on Dallas Goedert when he was ranked at tight end 11 in rankings. Now he's tight end 19. Now we're the other direction. I get not liking him, but he's so low among tight ends and overall in tight end premium. It's kind of nuts. I have him 30 overall spots higher or so in my tight end premium rankings. And having players like Isaiah Likely ahead of Goddard is very optimistic. I don't really see any path for Isaiah Likely. So why he's ranked so far ahead of Dallas Goedert in ranks, I have no idea. So, what has Goddard done in the NFL? Well, he sat behind Zach Ertz for a while, and he had some mixed success. In 2019, 58 catches for 607 yards, 5 touchdowns on 87 targets, 3.9 catches and 40.5 yards a game. Then in 2020, it was a little bit better because Ertz suffered an injury, but Goddard was also hurt, so he didn't really fully capitalize on that. Then in 2021, it kind of all came together, at least from an efficiency standpoint. 56 catches, 830 yards. That's good. But only 4 touchdowns, 76 targets, 3.7 catches, but 55.3 yards a game. And then things kind of got weird after the Eagles trade for A.J. Brown in 2022. Goddard was still good. 55 catches, 702 yards, and 3 touchdowns on 69 targets. 4.6 catches and 58.5 yards a game. He really threaded the needle. He did a lot on those 69 targets. I mean, caught 55 of them. That's a great catch rate. He had a lot of yards. Did a lot with little volume. But then in 2023, it kind of didn't come back there. He had 83 targets in 14 games, so kind of similar, but just 59 catches, 592 yards, the same 3 touchdowns, 4.2 catches, and down to 42.3 yards per game. He wasn't really relevant. The problem is that Goddard has missed time every year, and has struggled to be consistent when other options are all healthy. His best stretch was in 2021 when after Zach Ertz was traded, and he's never had good touchdown luck. He never had more than 5 touchdowns in any season. Now, how could Goddard be relevant? He's still a key part of the offense. The Eagles say this all the time. He's under a large contract extension, so he's important to them. And he has room to grow if A.J. Brown or Devonta Smith misses time. Both of them have played in all but one game. Brown has played all 34, and Smith has played 33 in the last 2 years. The Eagles have no wide receiver 3 and no other relevant tight ends. So if Brown or Smith ever miss time, we know Dallas Goedert is good, and we know that he'll probably be a little bit more relevant in that week, making him easy to start in lineup leagues if that ever happens. Also, Goddard is still only 29 and is the redraft tight end 12 by ADP. So there might be some value with him at tight end 19 in Dynasty. Now, to close out on Dallas Goedert, I get fading him, and I have been fading him up until his price has fallen so far. But now his price is too low. Not every player can be sexy with sexy upside. I do think there is some upside with Goddard. Touchdown regression, maybe. But the upside is really injuries, and we don't really like to talk about upside due to injuries. But it's not just one player. There's 2 players where if either of them were to get hurt, Dallas Goedert would have some contingent upside. Now, I want to get to some of the Patreon questions, so let's jump into that. When do you think May and McCarthy will take over starting quarterback if they don't start week 1? At this point, I don't think either starts week 1. Patriots have a new coaching staff, not on the hot seat. I think they're more likely to go to Drake May earlier. They play at the Jets in week 3, at the 49ers in week 4. Those are tough matchups. I think Drake May goes in week 5 at home versus the Dolphins. As for JJ McCarthy, I do think the Vikings like Sam Darnold more than the Patriots like Jacoby Brissett. I think the Vikings' plan is to bring in McCarthy week 7 at home versus the Lions after their week 6 bye, but I don't think that's set in stone. Next up, do you think Will Levis will be a starting quarterback this time next year? If I have to guess, most second-round picks fail. So I'd lean no. The Titans' new coaching staff under Brian Callahan did not draft Will Levis, although the general manager did. I think Levis would need to be more than passable to hold the job, and his 2023 stats of 58.4% completion, 8 touchdowns, 4 interceptions, 7.1 yards per attempt is okay, but it's just too inaccurate to remain the starter. He'll need to improve his accuracy if he wants to remain their starter. Now, if you liked the video, make sure to drop a like and leave a comment with your thoughts. As always, the best way to support the YouTube channel is to subscribe, and don't forget to hit that notifications bell so you can be notified about all my exciting content as it drops. Of course, if you want my best fantasy football advice, it's available on the Patreon. Dynasty, redraft, rookie, start sit, and more. And every sign-up helps support my independent content. But once again, thanks for watching, and I'll see you all later.